Don't study law, Jefferson. Study men.
I do remember the last time I saw her. She was standing on an auction block.
We intend for independence.
He tells me that he wants liberty and equality.
But fear within a city.
A free white Englishwoman.
Of course, Lord Cornwallis himself.
Friends, you have been a delight. It is always a pleasure.
The dignity and worth of human personality.
After the Treaty of Alliance between France and the United States of America, the French king, Louis XVI, decided to send supplies, money, weapons, and an experienced officer named General Rochambeau. Washington and Rochambeau would establish their plans for victory in a series of meetings that took place from 1780 to 1781. It was decided from their first meeting that New York City would be the objective of their two forces. But Rochambeau cautioned Washington that they did not have the strength, neither in soldiers nor ships, to succeed there. After much debate and through reconnaissance, Washington finally conceded and took the advice of Rochambeau not to attack New York, but rather move south and gain the advantage against the British field army in Virginia. General Washington had dispatched General Lafayette to Virginia in the spring of 1781. Lafayette would assume command of the Light Infantry Division and attempt to capture the traitor Benedict Arnold. Thus the two began fighting a cat-and-mouse campaign across Virginia. Lafayette, unfortunately, was the mouse. General Washington made his decision to march southward with the combined French and American forces in the third week of August 1781. General Rochambeau had been in correspondence with the French Admiral de Grasse, who was in the Caribbean with a sizable French fleet. De Grasse agreed to sail north and assist Washington's operations in the Chesapeake. The French fleet under de Grasse met with the English fleet under Graves in what is known as the Battle of the Capes. The French fleet was victorious, and the English fleet, unaware that Washington and Rochambeau were marching to Virginia, decided to sail to New York. This naval action was the most important key to victory at Yorktown. Lord Cornwallis, realizing he had no possibility of escape by sea, began earthen fortifications at Yorktown. Cornwallis was trapped. With the full support of the French fleet under de Grasse, Washington and Lafayette arrived in Williamsburg, Virginia on the 14th of September and met at George Wythe's home to plan the siege for a trapped Cornwallis. Finally, the stage was set for Yorktown.
Gilbert, it is so good to see you after these last several months, and I am very impressed with the work you've done here in Virginia.
Thank you, mon
Please
général.
inform me, what is our circumstances in Virginia at present?
Indeed, my heart is filled with joy to be reunited with you, mon général, after so many months. But the situation at hand is thus. Since you dispatched me in March of this year, 1781, you had given me 3 orders. One, of course, to capture the turncoat, Benedict Arnold, who had been sent here by his new masters in January of this year. 2, to prevent the capture of all of the stores and equipment that was to be found here in what was once called the breadbasket of North America, since has changed. And 3, of course, to support you in whatever operation was to take place next, whether that be your assault upon New York City as initially planned, or to march southwards to assist in your more than able subordinate, General Nathaniel Greene, in fighting in the Carolinas. Well, of course, upon my arrival, General Benedict Arnold would not remain overly long. He would be replaced by, of course, General Phillips, and then, of course, Lord Cornwallis himself. We began fighting our cat-and-mouse campaign all summer long, battles at Point of Fork and Spencer's Ordinary and Green Springs Plantation. But of course, I would receive the news from you by the 3rd week of August that you were not intending to attack New York as initially planned, but instead to come all the way here to Virginia to gain the advantage against Lord Cornwallis, who had placed himself 12 miles down the road at Yorktown. So, Now that you have arrived in the city with General Rochambeau, of course, the lead elements of this grand army have arrived, and I have my division, the Light Infantry Division, as well as the arrival of the Marquis de Saint-Simon with nearly 3,500 French soldiers at Jamestown on the 6th of this month. So I imagine that all of the battalions shall be arriving within the next week to 10 days. I am hopeful. Admiral Barras, I am told by General Rochambeau, has dispatched his ships with the siege artillery, and no doubt they will land at Burrell's Landing within the week. That will gain the advantage against Lord Cornwallis at Yorktown. He has placed himself there, and truly, mon général, what is Yorktown but a sleepy little tobacco port? In reality, it does not have any great defenses other than this noble river of York. So thus we know that Lord Cornwallis has begun construction of his defense works, his redoubts, his fortifications, but they will defend him only for a short time. They will not be able to sustain the heavy bombardment of the siege artillery that General Rochambeau should bear upon them. So, mon général, it is our estimation that we shall amass 21,000 soldiers, to include 8,000 French regulars, nearly 7,500 of our American soldiers, and the rest being made up of the militia. Many of those members of the militia here in Virginia are veterans of the Continental Line, so they shall prove effective against our enemy. So at the moment, mon général, we simply must wait. We must wait for all of the soldiers to arrive.
The time is of paramount importance just now. I'm already disappointed in how long it has been taking to get the vessels from Head of Elk to this place and to get the rest of our command here. We must get as many of our men here as possible as soon as we might. The longer we wait, the greater the chances are that General Clinton in New York will send reinforcements to Cornwallis. And that brings up another matter that brings me some concern. We have just completed a march of several hundred miles these last 6 weeks, all done with the intention that the Chesapeake Bay be closed. I was greatly pleased when I heard of the victory at the Battle of the Capes. But then we arrive here, and your countryman, Admiral de Grasse, is no longer on station. Have you any word from him? Do you know if he'll return?
Mon général, put your mind at rest. I am certain, through my speaking with General Rochambeau, that he shall return. No doubt, after the great victory at the Capes on the 5th of September, he was simply pursuing them to make them believe that he was going to pursue them all the way to New York. But now, by his great action and victory, it has made the Chesapeake free of English ships. That means that Lord Cornwallis is now trapped at Yorktown, mon général. No possibility of escape by sea or resupply by sea. I do believe he shall return. It is the promise that he has made to General Rochambeau. I have spoken with him this morning. I assure you, mon général, he shall return.
Well, I certainly hope it is true. We are engaged in a great gamble here, bringing this army all the way from New York to this place, leaving New York undefended. We must have this victory. I don't think this war can continue for much more than another 6 months at most. We must see a victory. And it relies upon that French fleet being in position when we need it in position. I will take your word, and we will do what we may. We're committed now. I would like to order a reconnoiter of York so we can know exactly the circumstances of the defensive works in that place. And then I suppose we are forced to wait until the artillery arrives, so the rest of my men arrive, and hopefully until that fleet returns.
Mon général, put your mind at ease once again. I have spoken again with General Rochambeau. He has dispatched the French cavalry under the Duc de Lauzun across the river, and they have invested the outer portion of the defenses of the enemy at Gloucester Point.
So well.
We know from our reconnaissance that it is Colonel Dundas and the 80th Regiment of Foot, as well as the cavalry elements of Lord Cornwallis's forces, the Queen's Rangers under John Graves Simcoe, and of course the British Legion under the infamous Colonel Tarleton. So thus we will counter him with our cavalry, as well as several battalions of General Choisy's French forces. If I am not mistaken, you have already dispatched some of the militia under General Nelson. Is that not the case?
And our horse as well.
Splendid.
I think they'll be of greater use there than they'll be in a siege.
Indeed.
If everything comes together, if everything works as we've intended, then we might be on the verge of a great and important victory. And that we might finally see these 6 long years of bloody war brought to a successful conclusion.
My dear friends, I have the most wonderful news. We have just won at Yorktown. But a few short days ago, Lord Cornwallis was forced to surrender his entire command of nearly 8,000 soldiers in what is now the greatest victory in the war. But how did we come to this point? Well, in 1776, when you, the American people, declared for independence, the war was predominantly found in the Northeast. Battles were fought, battles were lost. But after General Washington won battles at Trenton in December of 1776, and then at Princeton in 1777, and then the twin victories at Saratoga in September and October of 1777, it changed the nature of the war. My country of France would sign the Treaty of Alliance in February of 1778. So thus it went from a rebellion, a revolt, a civil war of sorts, to a world war in which England would have to defend her vast empire across the globe, in India, Africa, the West Indies, Europe itself, and at the same time put down this rebellion here in North America. They had a change of command. From the Howe brothers was replaced with General Clinton, and his new campaign took the English forces to the south, where they found a great deal of success. For we all recall reading about the losses at Savannah in 79, the fall of Charleston in May of 1780, the lesser engagements around that city. And as they crept forward into North Carolina and finally into Virginia, well, it was then that General Washington would dispatch me, the Marquis de Lafayette, right here to Virginia. And he gave me 3 tasks. First, well, it was to capture a man we all once called a friend. Of course, we speak of the traitor Benedict Arnold. He had now been given a new command by his new masters and sent to Virginia with a task force of nearly 2,500 soldiers. I was to stop him. Second, well, I was to prevent the enemy, whomever might command, from capturing all of the vitally needed supplies that were to be found here in this breadbasket of North America. And thirdly, when General Washington gave the order, I was to march my division northwards to assist him in an attack upon New York City. Well, by the time I arrived in Virginia, I could not complete the first part of my task, for General Benedict Arnold would not remain overly long. He would soon be replaced by none other than Lord Cornwallis himself, and we would begin to fight a cat-and-mouse campaign all summer long. Unfortunately, I was the mouse the majority of the time. But battles such as Point of Forks, Spencer's Ordinary, and Green Springs Plantation, until by the 3rd week of August, I received the dispatch that I had longed for from General Washington, informing me that he was preparing to march southwards, not to attack New York City, as initially planned, but instead to come all the way to the tidewater of Virginia, where he might gain the advantage against our enemy, Lord Cornwallis, who had placed himself 12 miles down the road at Yorktown. Well, they began their march, but before they even set foot upon Virginia soil, a great victory had already been achieved, and this one was at sea. For it would be the French fleet, commanded by Admiral de Grasse, normally guarding the lucrative sugar islands of Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Saint-Domingue, that would enter into the Chesapeake, and there upon the 5th of September would fight the great Battle of the Capes, and the French were victorious. What did this mean? This meant that our enemy, Lord Cornwallis, would now have no possibility of escape by sea or resupply by sea. He was now trapped at Yorktown with no possibility of escape. General Washington and French General Jean-Baptiste Donatien de Vimeur, le Comte de Rochambeau, their combined armies would enter the city of Williamsburg upon the 14th of September, 1781, and each day thereafter, More and more bataillons, regiments, brigades, divisions would arrive until Washington had amassed 21,000 soldiers. General Washington would give the order to march upon the 28th of September, and march we did. We surrounded that place of Yorktown. We dug what we call our parallel lines. We pushed our guns in place. Washington himself would begin the bombardment upon the 9th of October, and that bombardment would not stop until victory was assured. On the evening of the 14th of October, Washington told us all that we needed to take those 2 earthen fortifications that were on the extreme left flank of Cornwallis's position. They were simply referred to as Redoubts 9 and 10. And being that this was a joint operation between French and American forces, one would be assaulted by the Americans, Redoubt number 10, and one by the French, Redoubt 9. So under cover of darkness, with unloaded muskets, making the men put their trust in the bayonets, they assaulted those 2 redoubts and took them with great dash and fire. By the next morning, we were beginning our second parallel lines, and we were firing point blank into the enemy positions. Now, Lord Cornwallis, of course, would try in vain to try and escape. You see, the English had fortified a position directly across from Yorktown, referred to as Gloucester Point. There he had placed his cavalry under John Graves Simcoe and the Queen's Rangers, under Colonel Tarleton and the British Legion, and under the overall command of Colonel Dundas and the 80th Regiment of Foot. But proving that God is not an Englishman, a great storm arose in the middle of the night, scattering his small craft and preventing the English army from crossing from Yorktown to Gloucester Point. Victory was assured. And my dear friends, that surrender would take place the 19th of October, 1781, the day we have won at Yorktown. My dear friends, we have come to this point. I am so pleased and honored to be with you here today, but more importantly, to be here with His Excellency, General Washington. So we welcome you all today as we might discuss Yorktown.
Thank you so much, General Lafayette, General Washington. It's a pleasure to have you both here, and I'm certain that our viewers at home are excited about this new news coming from Yorktown.
How could they not help it, my dear friend?
It ushers in a new era, does it not?
It does indeed.
Now, Lafayette, you spoke, General Lafayette, you spoke a great deal of your fellow countrymen who were involved in this effort to win at Yorktown. So my question to you then, General Washington, is how important were the French in this effort? How important was this French alliance? And what forces were used on both sides during the Yorktown campaign in '81?
The involvement in our alliance of France has been most important in this war. I will begin first by speaking the larger portion of the war itself. When we declared ourselves independent, one of the reasons for that was to open the door for foreign aid, that we might find an alliance with a foreign nation. As long as this remained as it was previously, a civil war, no foreign nation would engage herself within it. We had to declare ourselves independent. And one of the reasons we needed to do so is we needed the use of a strong navy. Our navy is small and fledgling. We needed a proper navy. The most modern navy in all the world is that of the French. So we opened and endeavored to find an alliance which we have now enjoyed these last several years. Now, as to the particular campaign here at York, it is even of a greater importance, this alliance with France, perhaps, because over half of my command in this place are French soldiers. The whole reason we are engaged, the whole reason that we marched away from New York was because of the French fleets. 2 French squadrons presently are floating at the mouth of the Chesapeake. The presence of those vessels are exactly what trapped Cornwallis at York. It was for that reason that we have our victory, that, as was already mentioned by Lafayette, they could not escape resupply or be resupported. This victory that we have now enjoyed is very much, a good portion of it is because of our French aid and support.
Thank you, General Washington. And to those of you at home who have questions for either of these two esteemed gentlemen, type them in the comments, and one by one, we'll get to them. That being said, our first guest question is about apparel. There was a short video that was shown prior to this moment of us sitting here in this room. And in that video, in that recording, General Lafayette, you were wearing a hat upon your head, and General Washington, you were not. Is this customary to wear a hat inside, outside? Does it matter when you wear a hat and when you do not? This question is from Rebecca.
Thank you for your question, Rebecca. And forgive me, General Washington, if I might take the opportunity to answer this question, but I am a bit confused as this recording of what you had seen of us. But no doubt she was perhaps present at that meeting that General Washington and myself had at his headquarters at the George Wythe House, in which we were discussing some of these plans. Now, I suppose in my haste of reporting some information to General Washington, I had forgotten my deportment, for it is proper for an officer or a gentleman, or anyone for that matter, that when they enter into a room inside some sort of building or structure, whether it be a tent or a house, that those of greater rank, which General Washington most assuredly is, will set the pace for what gentlemen should wear. So if the General, as he is now, not wearing his hat, I will not wear my hat either. So it is the responsibility of those of lower rank, like myself, not to wear my hat when the General, had he been wearing his hat, I would wear my hat as well. So you are very observant in my poor conduct of reporting that information to General Washington. So though my deportment was poor, the information that I revealed to General Washington upon that occasion was very important. So I am certain that General Washington did not mind very much that I was wearing my hat at that moment. Excellent question, Rebecca.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. She asks also a question about uniforms and mentions that you are wearing very similar looking uniforms. Is that commonly the case?
Well, it's one of the whole purposes of a uniform, that they be uniform. The uniforms that we are wearing at present are a uniform, in fact, of my own design. This is the general officer's uniform for the Continental Army. Not all men would be dressed the same way. In fact, the truth is, at present, most of my command haven't been wearing their regimental coats at all. They're in lighter weight hunting shirts. And this was done quite on purpose. The army that we brought to York is not our Southern Army. It is our Northern Army. And there is a great concern in the North. They are overly fearful of the heat of our summers. So before we left, so that I might maintain the spirit of the Army, I had them put their regimentals in baggage and wear hunting shirts for their comfort. Now, the officers, of course, well, there's certain expectations for officers. We are both wearing, as I say, a general officer's uniform. It is a blue uniform with buff facing. This is based upon the support that we were given at the beginning of this war from the Whig Party in Great Britain, back when we were still British colonies. Where our uniforms differ is, well, one in the detail of our insignia, which I'm not certain you can see, but I have 3 stars on my shoulder as General and Commander-in-Chief, whereas the Marquis has 2, as he's a Major General. Also, our hats are considerably different. This is my hat here. My hat I've left relatively simple because, well, I prefer simplicity and I designed the uniform. Most of the general officers wear plumettes. Usually for an American, it will be black and white to signify our alliance with France. You'll notice this one is red in black, and that is because the Marquis has the honor of being the Major General of my light infantry division, and red is the color of the light infantry.
Indeed, if I might, mon général, it is a misconception that being that I am a Frenchman, that I wear a French uniform. But as the General has stated, I wear an American uniform because I came to America as an American volunteer. So thus, I had the honor and privilege of commanding American soldiers. Thank you, Monsieur Smith.
Thank you, and thank you, Rebecca, for that question. Our next question goes to Sean. And we've been speaking a great deal about foreign involvement in this war, specifically with the French, and we thank God for the French. But Sean wants to know about the Spanish and their involvement and investment in this war.
I'm glad, Sean, that you've added the word investment. We've received a great deal of money from the Spanish. There are Spanish soldiers involved as well, and Spanish sailors, but we've received a great amount of money from Spain. Spain has a treaty with France that she will always come and aid France when France finds herself at war, particularly with her natural enemy, England. So this is a good portion of how Spain has become one of our allies. But we won't quibble over the details. We're glad to have Spain regardless.
And indeed, the Spanish have provided soldiers and ships, and most importantly, as the General has stated, a great deal of money. And it was with this money that they were able to fund the French expedition from the West Indies under Admiral de Grasse, sending that fleet forward to really help us to achieve our victory at Yorktown. But also, the General had mentioned the Grand Alliance between France and Spain. For at present, we French and our Spanish ally are presently besieging a place called Gibraltar, right at the entrance of the Mediterranean Sea, between the Pillars of Hercules, connecting Europe with Africa. And this is, of course, most upsetting to the English. And we even are talking about an invasion of England itself, a joint venture between French and Spanish forces. So the Spanish are indeed a great ally and a great friend, not only of France, but of American freedom.
Thank you, General Lafayette, and thank you, Sean, for that question. Viewers at home and beyond, wherever you are, if you have questions for either general, type them in the comments, and we will get to them as soon as we can. Gentlemen, you clearly are experienced in battle. You're experienced different arms in battle. Louisa wants to know, did you use swords in battle, or do you use bayonets when it comes to blades?
What a superb question, Louisa. Indeed, mon général.
Louisa, any officer will carry a sword. This is mine here, the one that I've been relying on in the field for the most. But a general officer's weapon is not a sword or a bayonet. It is the army itself. Now, for individual soldiers, cavalrymen rely upon swords, or dragoons quite frequently, and the infantrymen will rely oft on the bayonet. In fact, I was thinking of this earlier when General Lafayette made the comment he did about our taking of the redoubts. But when we marched, we gathered on our way to York in the former capital of Virginia at Williamsburg. And when we made our march there, a 2-day march from Williamsburg to York, I ordered the men to march with their bayonets set, without their weapons loaded, so that if the enemy were to make an attack upon us, that we would return it by push of bayonet. And one of the reasons we had decided to do this, it was the decision or a suggestion of General Wayne, was that we might belittle them in their high regard they have of their own use of that weapon.
Thank you, General Washington, and thank you, Louisa, for that question. Our next question is likely for you, General Lafayette, and this question comes from Johnny. Johnny wants to know if you can talk about the French soldiers' morale or their thoughts on coming to America to fight for this cause in the first place. I know you might not have correspondence with all of the French soldiers, but maybe Rochambeau or de Grasse. Can you talk about the French morale and their thoughts for fighting on the soil?
Absolutely. Thank you, Johnny, for your fantastic question. The French morale. Well, once the Treaty of Alliance was signed between France and America in February of 1778, and my king, Louis XVI, and Queen Marie Antoinette decided to send an expeditionary force to assist the Americans. This was called an expédition particulière, and this expedition would be led by General Jean-Baptiste Donatien de Vimeur, le Comte de Rochambeau. This was a man who was a veteran of the War of Austrian Succession, the 7 Years' War, had made a great deal of reforms in the French army, and he was best suited to lead this expedition. Now, the vast majority of French regiments that were dispatched to America, departing from the port of Brest, were soldiers that would do their duty. They would be disciplined, would obey the orders. They had just received a tremendous amount of new training, new equipment, the great reforms that had been made. They were in many ways a new army from that of the 7 Years' War. But any soldier, no matter what country they come from, when they are departing their home to go on an expedition, which in truth many of them did not know their destination at first, will become a bit disheartened, a bit saddened at leaving their homes. But as a soldier, they must show their courage. And what is courage? It is the ability to do what is right or what is asked of you despite the presence of fear. So these soldiers landing in Newport in Rhode Island, July the 10th and the 11th of 1780, nearly all of them had never been to America before. So this was a new land, a new world, as you like to call it. So it took them a bit of time getting used to things, finding their newfound friends in the form of the American people. But once the two armies met at White Plains and began that grand reconnaissance of New York, and then when it was decided to march southwards, well, there was a kinship, a friendship of sorts that was made between the two armies because they were fighting for a common cause. One would bleed for the other. So now they were on the same side and they were willing to give their lives for the other side to achieve victory. I think once the siege of Yorktown began and the sad reality of those dead, those dying in the course of the battle, the American soldier realized the extent that these French soldiers were willing to go to help them win their independence. So though it was difficult, though many wanted to go home, I think perhaps in the annals of history you would find such soldiers since the ancient world, and I am sure into the future all soldiers essentially will be the same in that they want to go home, but they will do their duty and their utmost to succeed. So Johnny, you ask a superb question, but what I have seen in the French army is a highly disciplined force led by an excellent general with a great deal of experience that has proven himself, and I suppose the greatest proof is helping to achieve victory at Yorktown. Thank you, Johnny.
And we thank them. It's difficult enough to fight chance commingling your blood upon soil that you might improve, but to do so halfway around the world for a people you do not know, what a cause. Thank you for your service, General Lafayette, and your countrymen. The next question is from Susie about a different battle, but its potential effect on Yorktown. Susie wants to know about the Battle of Cowpens, and as small as it was, she says, did it have much of an influence or impact leading up to the surrender at Yorktown?
One could certainly make the argument that it does. One of the reasons that Cornwallis had come into Virginia in the first place was after the effects of Cowpens. So in that fact it did. Cornwallis coming into Virginia and endeavoring to disrupt the economy of Virginia and endeavoring to attack the breadbasket to prevent General Greene from being further supplied in the South is what led to him being encamped at York. And see, York is a peninsula. By having placed himself there, he put himself at great danger, made it very easy that we could capture him, trap him, and take advantage of that circumstance. So certainly, in that matter, it certainly leads to York.
And indeed, if I might, Mon Général, it is very important to remember that this formation that was led by Colonel Bannister Tarleton, who was the English commander, who was defeated at Cowpens in January of 1781, earlier this year, was composed of the best of the English cavalry. And after Cowpens, they were either captured, wounded, or killed. So he had lost the bulk of these well-trained, disciplined soldiers, and they would never achieve that status again. Yes, new recruits would be found. Those survivors who escaped from the battle would still fight under his banner. But of those other major engagements that he would take part in, most notably Guilford Courthouse in March of 1781, and some of the engagements here in Virginia, well, the British Legion would never again be the same. The English had lost a great many soldiers there, whether they be killed or wounded or captured, and thus that would hurt that Southern army. And of course, the English did not have soldiers to spare. So with the loss of any of His Majesty's soldiers, it is hurting the likelihood that the English would find success in America. A superb question. Thank you.
We have questions from all over the world and all over multiple platforms. This question is from a viewer on YouTube named Timothy. And Timothy wants to know, General Washington, what was your sense of what this nation might become? And does that thought of who we might become affect your leadership role in the military?
I think we have before us an amazing possibility, a promise, if we can make good on the present circumstances, if we can continue this success, and if we prove victorious, if this war should terminate in a manner that is pleasing for our nation. We have already continued through 6 years of long and bloody conflict, and our army has continued onward against impossible odds. And they have done so and persevered regardless of their want of food, in some occasions want of clothing. The fact that they have continued, it's nothing short of a standing miracle. The victories that we have gained so far, the thanks for these certainly do not belong to ourselves. They belong to the gracious interposition of an overruling providence. And I can only imagine that providence, after having already carried us through numerous dangers and hazards, does not now intend to leave its work undone. I believe that we will be viewed as players on a most conspicuous of stages, one that is destined for human greatness and felicity.
Hear, hear, mon général.
Thank you, sir. We have, as I mentioned, we're not just streaming on Facebook, but on YouTube and on our website, the Colonial Williamsburg website. And this question comes from Louisa from our website. Did spies play a part in the victory at Yorktown?
If I might, mon général.
Absolutely.
Louisa, thank you for your question. In regard to espionage or the spy ring, of course, spies have been used throughout the history of warfare, and this war was no different. Of course, His Excellency General Washington has had his spy ring, as have I here in Virginia. And being that the time has passed for me to concern myself as to his safety, for I know he is no longer serving as a spy, I shall share a quick story with you. There was a spy, or rather a man, that was put in my service in the spring of this year, 1781. He was sadly a slave. His name was James Armistead. Now, after speaking with this man for some time, I discovered he was quite intelligent, quite resourceful, and so I requested of him and his master that he be put in my service to do with as I wish. Some thought perhaps as a valet de chambre, as a palefrenier, whatever it might be, but I requested of James that he serve as a spy for me. Now, you must understand, this is a great request, for if you are captured as a spy, you are immediately killed, or at least punished in a great way. And he was a slave. He had no vested interest in this war, yet he agreed to serve me as a spy. And he made his way into the enemy's encampment and actually served Benedict Arnold for a while, and he served Lord Cornwallis. And much of the information that James was able to acquire was vital in bringing us our victory at Yorktown. So yes, Louisa, the spy ring played a very important part, but this man, James, played a very important part, even as a slave. Indeed, I am hopeful, for I shall lend my voice, my right arm, my purse, and my pen to do everything within my power to find freedom for this man who risked his life for this great cause of American freedom and helped us to win at Yorktown. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Louisa.
It's a delightful question and a delightful answer. Thank you, General Lafayette. And if you want to know more, come to Colonial Williamsburg. We're blessed with a plethora of full and whole stories here. Speaking of whole stories, Esther, General Lafayette, wants to know some of your backstory and how you got here in the first place. Esther seems to have it on good authority that maybe the king didn't wish you to come here, and what was that like? How did you get here?
I thank you, Esther. You are familiar with a bit of my life. And yes, if I might, mon général, how did I come to this place and time? Well, of course, I am a Frenchman, and I was serving in the French army before my arrival here in America. But I attended a special dinner party with some of my brother officers in which the Duke of Gloucester was present, who is the brother to George III. And he was sympathetic to the American cause. And after speaking of the fighting at Lexington and Concord, of the Grand Congress in Philadelphia, and of course, of His Excellency, General Washington, I told my brother officers that I was ready and willing to give my life for this cause. Now, many have said, why? Why, Monsieur le Marquis? Why would you want to fight in such a cause? For France and England were not at war at that moment. Why would you want to risk yourself? Well, perhaps you know the answer to that question. For this had been a war like none other in the history of man, had it not? It was a war of great ideas, of the freedom, even the liberation of mankind. A war that had embraced the ideas of the great thinkers of what we call this enlightened age, this age of reason, with men like Voltaire and Rousseau and Montesquieu. These were people who believed that a man, no matter what station in life they might be born, whether they are black or white, Catholic or Protestant, rich or poor, slave or free, should not make a difference, but simply by the way in which that person would carry themselves and prove themselves in this world. So it was with this inspiration that I wanted to participate in this war. You are correct, Esther, in that I was not granted permission from the king when I requested to go, but I went anyway. But all would be forgiven. After my initial visit to America for 2 years, I would return back to France, and though I was confined to house arrest for 8 days, admittedly, it was house arrest at a chateau, so it was not so bad. But after those 8 days, all would be forgiven. And why? Well, because I had found success here in America. I had become part of the military family of General Washington. I had performed well upon the battlefield, but most importantly, the great Treaty of Alliance had been signed in February of 1778. So France and America were allied in a common cause of American freedom. So, Esther, to quote an Englishman, all's well that ends well. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you, General Lafayette. We only have time for 2 more questions. I wish we could do this all day long, but we'll get to 2 more, and we'll allow you, gentlemen, to be about your day. I know you have plenty to do. If we do not get to your questions, come visit us. Continue to engage with us online. We have multiple programs offered online all the time, so stay with us online. Come see us in Virginia. This question is from Kristen from our website. She's wondering about a gentleman who seems to be, well, there seems to be songs written about this man now, named Mr. Hamilton. Kristen wants to know, what was Alexander Hamilton's role at Yorktown?
Colonel Hamilton, until somewhat recently, has been my secretary, serving in my military family. And this has continued until recently, when I was forced to remove him from that position. I had asked him to attend me, and after waiting for 25 minutes, with no appearance by Colonel Hamilton, I was forced to go looking for the man. And I found him in discussion with his friends. Now, I'm very much of opinion that we are all put here on this earth with the intention that we improve upon the way that nature finds us, and that a man should learn to rein his irregular passions and desires. And Colonel Hamilton should be less concerned with himself and obey the instructions of his superiors. On the other hand, he is a young man. I have traveled that course far longer. I should not have allowed my reins of my anger to be so loosened. I shouldn't have removed him from that position simply out of anger. In fact, I attempted to see him return to the position. I offered it back, but he wouldn't take it. No surprise there. He had been wanting to be removed from the military family anyway, because secretaries rarely gain great honor. He wanted adventure. So I finally gave it to him. I hope he will accept it as some small gesture of apology. But earlier, General Lafayette mentioned the taking of the 10th Redoubt. That's the work of light infantry. So obviously that attempt was put under the command of Lafayette and his men. But the direct command, the man in charge of actually crossing the plains and taking that redoubt, fell by my request to Colonel Hamilton.
Thank you, General Washington. General Lafayette, I think it only appropriate, as you have come so far and fought so hard for us, that the final question go to you. This question is not just about our current circumstance, but about the future. What does this victory at Yorktown mean? Is it the end of war? And maybe most importantly, what comes next?
What a superb question. What does this victory at Yorktown mean? Does it mean the end of the war? Well, I shall be optimistic. I think it shall be the beginning of the end of this great war. We must, of course, understand the reality. The English still hold New York City. They still hold Charleston. They still have a sizable army here in America. But we have just inflicted upon them the greatest defeat of their country in the war. And that is the loss of 8,000 of His Majesty's soldiers. How will she replace them? Will she take them from other theaters of operation? From England itself, which is under threat of invasion? From her lucrative sugar islands in the West Indies? I think not. So, I do believe we are upon the course of winning this war. For if England cannot apply any more resources here to North America, thus the war will come to an end. And we must remember that this is not the only theater of operations. There are battles being fought across the globe, as I mentioned, in India, Africa, in the West Indies. Indeed, I spoke of the assault upon Gibraltar by the combined French and Spanish forces, the potential invasion of England, albeit we French have been talking about invading England since 1066, but let us hope another time shall come. But we must remember that that greater war is being fought. This war is expensive. The English grow tired of it, not only their armies here in North America, but across the globe, and the people back in England grow tired of war. They wish for it to come to an end. So I believe, with the news of this great victory at Yorktown, it shall be the beginning of the end of this great war for American independence. What shall it be? Well, a victory at Yorktown shall be the beginning. It shall be the foundation of this great nation of the United States of America that has been formed by you, the American people. And I believe it shall go far into the future. I believe it shall serve as a beacon for all other nations to look to as the truest example of freedom and of independence. God bless you all, my dear friends, and God bless this great nation of the United States of America. Thank you for joining us here today, my friends.
Thank you for enjoying today's Live from History live stream. This program and all of our programs at Colonial Williamsburg are made possible through the generosity of donors like you.